So I'm going to be a little bit repetitive right now, but I think it's important to note. Some of our nation's costliest social problems, like child abuse and neglect, school failure and poverty, unemployment and crime, are rooted in early childhood. This is where you come in. Trained, high-quality, strength-based home visitors that provide a safe, reflective space to help build a family's confidence and skill set. Support them through crisis and provide them warm handoffs to other resources, and help build a mutual, respectful, and strong relationship with your family is at the core of this program. Through research, evaluation, we know that home visiting increases school readiness. We know that it enhances the parent's ability to support their child's development, that it actually improves the child's health and development, prevents child injuries, abuse, and neglect, decreases the number of emergency room visits, reduces crime and domestic violence, and improves coordination and referrals for other community resources and supports. So this presentation is actually going to walk us through where we've been the last 3 years or so. Okay? So, point down. Thanks, Daniel. Everyone give Daniel a shout out. He's our AV guy. And before I'm going to stop for a second because I messed up this morning and they called me out on my mess up. I forgot, it was on the slide, but I forgot to have Torrance Memorial stand up. All 2 of them. Torrance Memorial. I apologize for this morning skipping over your name. Angie and Yesenia, you know how important you are to me. All right, so I'm going to continue. So where did we begin? Give you a little bit of a history of where we've been. In 2007 to 2009, we started with the program planning and model design for Welcome Baby. Okay? It wasn't until August 2009-ish or so where California Hospital and Maternal and Child Health Access got the grant to pilot the Welcome Baby program. So you can see that's that little circle there. I want to give Jan a shout out because what I had done was I had just listed all this stuff on a slide, but she made it into a pretty picture when I gave my slides for her to revise. Clearly she was trying to tell me something. So in 2009, California Hospital and MCH Access started the pilot. And lo and behold, through all that process, we got some really great results, which led ultimately to the expansion of Welcome Baby. Some of those results included, on average, mothers who participated in Welcome Baby demonstrated higher levels of support for their child in their home. Those who participated in Welcome Baby were at least 1.5 times more likely to exclusively breastfeed during the first 4 months than mothers who did not participate in the program at all. Mothers who participated in Welcome Baby were 8 times more likely to vaccinate their children, all the required vaccinations, and were 9 times more likely to ensure that those immunizations were actually on time. Additionally, Welcome Baby participants were really satisfied with the home visits they received. They did, of course, express the want and need for more intensive and comprehensive services, ultimately leading to where Healthy Families America and Parents as Teachers come in. Additionally, we know that Welcome Baby home visits provide a strong and high-valued service in the community. And, of course, we've been able to leverage all the resources and different community organizations that are available to ensure that we serve the family that we're serving. So ultimately, in 2013, the oversight got the grant somewhere in February, March of 2013, and we started with our Cohort 1 training in 2013 of May. And those hospitals were Northridge, Little Company, and St. Mary. Where are you guys at? Just about a month later, then we had Cohort 2, White Memorial, St. Francis, Providence Holy Cross, and St. Mary. Where are you guys? So within just a few months, we had 6 Welcome Baby hospitals on board. And then additionally, in September 2013, we have Antelope Valley joined us. And then in September 2013, we also had Miller's Children and Citrus join us. And then in February 2014, we had Valley Press, Torrance, and Centinela join us. This was also that critical time point where we finally had the Stronger Families database for Welcome Baby. So I'm just curious to know, does Welcome Baby remember doing all that back entry? All right, I want you guys to give a collective awe to the HFA and PAT folks because they're going through that right now. Go ahead. Yeah. See, we do show support, just like that. Our home visiting groups, HFA, PAT, and Triple P, came on in July 2014. And then in September 2015, our last hospital, Martin Luther King, came on to the Welcome Baby hospital list. All the way in the back. So currently we are in cohort 9. Who's in cohort 9? There should be at least 60 of you raising your hand. It's been a whole week we haven't seen each other. Are you guys feeling okay? No sandwiches? No one ringing the chime? All right. And of course, we currently have the home visiting programs database that went live a little bit ago, and we're in the back entry process right now. So I'm going to provide you guys with some things that you already know. As you know, these are the 14 Best Start communities as designated by First 5 LA that you guys all serve. As you all know, the main entryways into the program are either through outreach prenatally or through the hospital. And ultimately, depending on if the client is a Best Start or non-Best Start and how they score on the bridges, they filter into different programs. Who loves this diagram? I'm seeing only smiles at this table that includes First 5 LA. I think it's because you may have designed it. So, oh well. And of course, you have the timeline for Welcome Baby. We did go through some changes. If you all remember, we had the 2-month phone call originally, but now we have a 2-month home visit. So that was one of the changes that took place in 2014. Additionally, we did change the bridges for newborn cutoff score. We used to have it at 60, and what is it at now? Only like 5 people knew the answer to that. That worries me. We'll have to put a Bridges for Newborn training. It's happening June 19th. Please attend. All right, so where are we now? We're now 14 hospitals, 12 HFA sites, 8 PAT sites. We've gone through 9 cohorts of training. We've trained over 600 staff. We also know that there's a big component for evaluation that's begun. The first one is the Bridges Psychometric Study, which is being done by RAND. So where are all the hospital liaisons at? So this group of folks, the hospital liaisons, have that special job of walking into the hospital room and assessing and pitching the program to potential clients. For those HLs out there, what does it feel like to walk out into a room that you have no idea whose room you're walking into and pitching this program and using this assessment? Just shout it out. It feels great? What was that? Like a box of chocolate. Now I know you're lying. Thank you. Now I know you're telling the truth. You never know what you're going to get. All right, that works. It's a complicated job. I think we need to give a shout out to the hospital liaisons because all they have when they walk into a client's that table toy with the one slap hand, Raven, that thing. All our hospital liaisons have when they walk into a client's room is essentially if the client was a prenatal client, they might have some information, but they'll also have maybe the hospital chart, and you're walking into something where you don't know what you're going to get, okay? I look forward to hopefully one day getting a few more videos of hospital liaisons where they're telling their exciting stories of what they're walking into, except the naked one, which we heard. Thank you for sharing. You just didn't want to see your backside. That's what it was. You were okay with everything else. Okay, just making sure. So the Bridges Psychometric Study, as you know, the Bridges for Newborn tool is not a validated tool, and that's the process we're going through right now. So all the hospital liaisons have been through the process of taking 3 scenarios, video scenarios, scoring it, and then retesting again to see if there would be any difference. And hopefully the results are looking good. Additionally, we have the outcome study, which is also being done by RAND, and that's basically most of the Welcome Baby hospitals have been contacted about this, where you're talking to RAND about what are the processes that are in place. They'll be talking to your families, you'll be doing shadowing, all that good stuff. So there, as Armando said this morning, there's a lot of evaluation going. We know it's tedious, but ultimately we want to show that these programs work. And I think the ultimate goal is universality. I'm being a little bit bold in saying it. I'm saying it out loud. But how cool would it be if every mom got a home visit, and ultimately, if they are considered high risk, they would get more home visits. And I think that's the path that we're moving towards. There's that map I was trying to find with the hands. There it is. So this is kind of cool. I like this map because it just gives us a sense of where our agencies are located without the Best Start communities. Some of them are overlapping. There aren't as many circles as there are agencies. But I think it's kind of cool. Like, look at all the places that we are serving. Look at everywhere that we're located. Ultimately, it'd be great if Welcome Baby becomes an evidence-based practice, evidence-based program. How cool would it be if it's integrated into every hospital, or the HFA and PAT program becomes one of those things that it's county served? All right, here we go. So here's some numbers. Number of mothers approached at the hospital. So between 2014, 2015, 2016, we have approached over 32,000 mothers at the hospital. Shout out to the HLs. You can clearly see where we were in 2014, 2015 fiscal year and where we are right now. And we're not even done with the fiscal year. We've got another month to go. So I have a feeling this number might pass 20,000. But we've done some amazing work. So total enrolled in the program. So again, if you're looking at the blue bars, that's 2014, 2015. The red bars are 2015, 2016. Prenatally, you'll see that we have doubled our numbers between 2014, 2015 and this fiscal year. And then you can see, again, we've doubled our numbers in postpartum. And again, we've just, in general, doubled our numbers in total. Duh. I'm just stating the obvious now. Again, a testament to all the work that's being done by you guys. So clients referred and accepted into the home visiting programs. So you'll see that we've made a lot of referrals, and we've also gotten a lot of acceptances into the home visiting program. So that includes HFA and PAT. So if you're looking at the blue line, those are your referrals. If you're looking at the red, it's the accepted. I heard a wow. Is that a good wow? That's a good wow? Thanks, Ms. Simpson. So as you can see, we're hopefully closing in on the gap of the number of referrals we're making and the number of acceptances. And the acceptances are not necessarily because agency didn't want the client, but there was various reasons, things like open DCFS cases where there was permanent removal of the child, also lost the contact. We know that's a really huge reason why we may not be able to enroll a client postpartum. So just to give you a little bit of the background of the clients we're serving. So these are self-identified demographic data. So of the 20,000, almost 21,000 people or mothers that responded to this question, 79% consider themselves Latina, and then 10% Black, 4% white, and 3% Asian and Asian Pacific Islander. Majority of the clients we're serving, almost 60%, are within 25 to 39 years old, followed by almost 30%, 20 to 24 years old. And again, this is a sample size of almost 21,000 between 2014 and 2016. Again, self-identified clients' marital status. You'll see that 32% of our clients are living with a partner. 33% consider themselves married to a partner. 33% also consider themselves single. So a fairly good split between single, married, and living together. And in terms of completed education level, majority of our clients have somewhere between a 9th and 12th grade education, completed high school education, GED, and some college. Again, this is between 2014 and 2016, about 21,000 sample size. But you'll see majority of them are between those three. In terms of domestic violence, substance abuse, and child abuse, a fairly even, almost 90% for all three of them had no known history. For domestic violence, 8% had said that there was a partner in treatment. And then 4% said they had a previous experience. For substance abuse, 6% had some history but no current use. 3% had someone in the family or a partner that was in treatment, and 2% said that the person was actually staying sober. And then again, for child abuse, almost 90% of no known history. It's important to note that 3% had a pending investigation, and almost about 8% had prior DCFS involvement. And again, this is about 21,000 clients between 2014 and 2016. In terms of prenatal care, if you'll notice, 80% of our clients accessed prenatal care within the first trimester. We had 15% that accessed their care in the second trimester, and about 3% that accessed their care in the third trimester. So we've got to do some work around that 18-19% right there to see what's going on. So in terms of risk level, we'll see that the blue lines are considered low risk. So anyone who scored a 49 and below on the Bridges for Newborn screening, and then those that are in the gray are considered the high risk. If they came in prenatally, we noticed that there was a higher number of low risk prenatal clients came in, but at the hospital we obviously have a lot more higher risk clients that we're finding. And that's interesting because that kind of speaks to our outreach folks. Where are their outreach? Outreach, raise your hand. Give yourselves a shout out. Sometimes it's difficult trying to find those clients, and this might be speaking to it a little bit. We find them in the hospital, but how can we find them out in the field? How can we ensure that we're finding them when we're doing our outreach? So infant feeding, and so this is breastfeeding specifically in terms of exclusive and some breastfeeding. At hospital initiation, 55% of clients had exclusive breastfeeding, and 37% had some breastfeeding. And again, this is almost 21,000 moms between 2014 and 2015. And then at the 2-month mark, we had almost 38% that were exclusively breastfeeding, and almost 37% that still had some breastfeeding. And then at the 9-month point, we had nearly 29% that were still exclusively breastfeeding, and 21% that at least had some breastfeeding still going on. And I think this is a major success because these numbers are high. I think especially for the exclusive 9-month, these numbers are good. So referrals. So when I first looked at this number, I was like, no, there's got to be something wrong with the database. There's no way we've made 27,000 referrals in one fiscal year, and the fiscal year is not even done. That's amazing. So since July 1st, 2015 till yesterday, nope, just kidding, May 30th, we've made 27,419 referrals for our clients. Okay, these referrals include anything from medical care, WIC, food access, transportation, DV, therapy, mental health, all those sorts of things. But it's amazing, almost over 27,000 referrals made for our clients. In 2014, 2015, we had 25,000, and then in 2013, 2014, we only had 5,000. So the number of active clients currently, in home visiting, we have right now 678 active clients as of May 30th. In prenatally across all the Welcome Baby sites, we have 761 prenatal clients. Welcome Baby Light, which is our non-Best Start Welcome Baby program, we have 380 active clients. And then Welcome Baby Full, 2,571 active clients currently. So number of clients who graduate the Welcome Baby program at the 2-month point, you'll notice in 2014, 2015, we had about 46% of non-Best Start clients graduate the 2-month program. In 2015, 2016, we're up to 56%. So that is wonderful. It's a 10% increase. And then in 2014-15, for our 9-month, we had a 39% completion rate for our 9-month for Best Start, and then currently we're at 43%. So we're definitely working our way up. It's working. Whatever we're doing, it's working. So where are we headed? Do those first 2 numbers scare you yet? So at full capacity, what we envision is that Welcome Baby will have 11,500 enrolled clients. and home visiting will have 3,400 active clients. And this is when we are all at full capacity, when everyone is full functioning in terms of all staff is hired, no one's going through trainings. We're not, you laughed at that. Why? Because we're always going through trainings? I know. Right, because the next bullet is trainings. But that is our ultimate goal. What we envision is that the amount of people that are in here, and of course we still have staff that need to be hired, ultimately with a little over 500 people, we think we can reach this goal. Welcome baby, 11,500 enrolled, and home visiting 3,400 active clients. So a little bit about the next fiscal year in terms of trainings. Of course, we will have peer-to-peers and regionals. We're planning on having 2 peer-to-peers, 2 sets of peer-to-peers, 2 sets of regionals. We'll probably span out our cohort training, so we're not doing it back-to-back so we don't tire you guys out with our sandwiches. Right. We also have another evaluation that started, or is starting this fiscal year, or next fiscal year, which is the impact study, which I won't get into right now because I already got the 1-minute point. But the point I want to get to here last is sustainability, is how are we going to ensure that what Armando said this morning is we're running out of money. How can we ensure that this is going to stay sustainable, that the work that we're doing right now is going to last beyond what we have right now that First Five is giving us in terms of money? So I think it's a really valid conversation in terms of how are the hospitals going to pick this up? What can we do in terms of reimbursement for Medical? What can we do with policymakers? What can we do with federal funding, McV, all those types of things? But ultimately, what can you do to stay involved? Okay? And that's what I'm going to leave you at. That's it. I am done. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Deborah Daro has played a key role in the development and assessment of evidence-based home visitation programs for the past 30 years and has worked with federal administrators and congressional leaders in crafting guidelines for the federal maternal, infant, and early childhood program, passed as part of the Affordable Care Act of 2010. In June 2009, she testified before the House Ways and Means Committee in support of President Obama's original proposal outlining this legislation. Prior to joining Chapman Hall in January 1999, Dr. Daro contributed to the development of Healthy Families America, one of the 12 evidence-based national home visiting models supported under McV. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to have you come up, but her full bio is in here. I highly suggest you read it.
Thank you all so much. This has been inspirational. Although I'm with... No, I'm fine here. Thank you. You're a little pushy, Charlene. Did you tell her that? She's excellent. She's an excellent trainer. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm sitting here. Superb. Although I am from Chicago, I've been coming to LA for many years, back to when the pilot was here. I first came, they wanted me to talk about home visiting to the policy folks, and the next thing I knew, I was coming back every other month just to talk to people at First Five LA. I'm a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley, so when I was at school, I know, don't all moan, but you know, LA was one of those places you really, you know, it's like, wow, those poor people that have to live in LA. We are in the Bay Area. But I have learned an amazing story coming here. I love LA. It is the most diverse, the most exciting, in many ways, one of the most accepting communities I've ever seen. And you all should congratulate yourself. Because here's the deal. The truth is, if you make this work in LA, you will be a model for the nation. And there's no doubt about it. You are so out ahead of the curve right now that I can't begin to tell you. But I wanted to spend my time today just giving you a little bit of history so that you can appreciate how truly ahead of the curve you are, and how you really are going to, I think, lead the field in the coming decade to go from just being a program for some to being the program for everyone, to being not just something you do occasionally, but something we will come to expect for every baby in this country. Because if we don't give it to everyone, we run the risk of not giving it to anybody, or we run the risk of saying that, oh, it's only those poor dysfunctional families that need some help. The rest of us are doing just fine. I'm here to tell you nobody does just fine. without a lot of help from a lot of people. And what you're doing is leveling the playing field. You're giving people the assistance that they most desperately need and wouldn't have if you weren't there. So in terms of a little history, I want to remind you all that home visiting is a very old idea. I'm old, but I'm not even as old as home visiting. It is a very important public policy issue now. If you were to talk to people in the US Congress, or you would talk to people in your own state legislature, it is an idea that really goes across the aisle. Everybody really wants to see that children get off to a good start. And that I think what you're doing in First Five, which is really building a home visiting system, not simply one program, is going to be the wave of the future. I'm going to talk about a little bit of the milestones in the field. That home visiting has gone through, much like computer programs get updated every once in a while. It was a program, it went to being a model, and that's a really important difference between a program that I'll talk about. Went to the idea of being an initiative. It wasn't just a program, it's now a movement. And then really helping us all think about what we need to do beyond the individual delivery of home visiting services. Why was home visiting important? From the very beginning, we knew it was important because it provided services in a non-stigmatizing manner. You went into someone's home and reduced a lot of the access, barriers to service access that we knew existed. You could individualize the message. You could talk about what this mother needed at this point in time, not in a general group discussion section. And I think most importantly, it gave us an opportunity to look at the very intimate context in which a baby is being reared. It's one thing for a mom to come to a medical meeting. It's one thing for a mom to come into a clinical office. It's another thing to go into her home. And it gives you a realization both of what is going right and what, sadly, in some cases, is not going right. So I'm going to talk about each of these little periods of history and start with the program, which really goes back, and this, I am old enough to know this, although some of you probably weren't born, in 1970 when we first started with the home visiting program. And there is a long history in home visiting about being interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. This is not a program that was owned specifically by the medical community or by educators or by social workers. This is a program that has really been built on a wide range of conceptual models. It goes back to the first home health visitors was a nurse named Mary Breckenridge. She had a horse, and in the 1900s, she would travel around Tennessee because she was so concerned about babies being born and dying, and concerned about their mothers dying in the course of childbirth. It's the settlement houses that Jane Addams did in many of the urban communities around the country, where you went in with new immigrants, and you've tried to explain, try to help them integrate and come into the new community in which they were joining. And it's about really child abuse and neglect and child welfare services. Dr. Henry Kemp, who is the father, the modern day father of our recognition of child maltreatment, often talked about home visiting wasn't just something you did because you wanted to help the health of the baby. It was a matter of justice. It was really a child's rights issue. And that's what he campaigned for so heavily. We've instituted and expanded home visiting in a variety of ways, sometimes through health centers. Cal Sia, who was a pediatrician in Hawaii, started the Hawaii Healthy Start program, which was one of the first really widespread home visitation programs in the country. They went and they did visit every baby in the hospital using what they called the Family Stress Checklist. And when families needed more services, they referred them on to more intensive services. But that was really our first example of what you're doing here in LA, and that was started in 1985. We've also disseminated home visiting services through education. Parents as teachers was in the gleam of an eye of someone in Missouri, and the director of the department of head of education said to the then governor, Kit Bond, who had just become a new dad later in life, and he was so enthralled with babies. They started replicating parents as teachers through all the school districts in that state and then went on to do it elsewhere. It's also been interdisciplinary in the kind of research we've used. We've really been able to build on certainly a lot of the very good work that was done by David Oles and his colleagues around the Nurse-Family Partnership. One of the first studies that really gave us, through a randomized trial, some hard evidence that this made a difference. It made a difference in not only the lives of the mom and the baby, but it made a difference going forward into their lives. It wasn't just an immediate idea or immediate change. It was a change that lasted a lifetime. It was a change, change begets change. Good things beget good things. And if you get people off on the right footing, it's amazing what they will accomplish over time. Other ideas followed, and although there is a lot of talk about child abuse prevention programs in a lot of different ways, at this period of time, home visiting really became not just one idea, but it was perhaps in the eyes of many of us that were working then, the idea we had been waiting for. And I'll talk about why you shouldn't always believe in one idea. But it was a very, very important process. The key takeaways from this early work that we did in home visiting was that there were a lot of models operating in a lot of states and in a lot of organizational settings. You could do home visiting in a variety of ways, in a variety of contexts. There was really growing public investment and private interest in how this program should be developed. Going back to 1992, 17 states had started home visiting initiatives around the country. The total value of their investments, if you were to put it in constant dollars, was about $304 million. So the investments, even going back to the early 90s, was quite substantial. And I think we did it because there was a real sense that there was something meaningful happening. And you saw a lot of the national models being able to grow and prosper. And we were focusing on a lot of evidence. We were gathering the very kinds of details that Charlene talks about. I know you hate that database, but you know what? You're going to love that database when it produces information that you can then take to people and get the money y'all deserve to run your program. And as a researcher, I got to tell you, I kind of like the data. She said the data geek. I was one of the 5 hands. It'll get you every time. But on the other hand, if you don't have it, if you really don't have it, in this day and age, there's no way you're going to break through to the level of investment that you most certainly need to get the job done. The one thing that happened during this period, though, is people were very provincial. One of the colleagues from First Five, I won't mention her name because this was a while ago, talked about the disease you had in Los Angeles was called terminal uniqueness. Everybody needed to be their own thing. I will tell you that that disease is not just limited to LA. It is probably the most universal characteristic I have seen in any community I've ever worked in. Everybody believes that what they're doing has to be specialized, tailorized, made to fit just what they have. And there is a lot of specialization in the work you do, but there's a lot of learning we can take from each other. And that really is what led to the second phase of home visiting, which was what I called the model. Now, we didn't have a program anymore. The idea that we had really moved from this period from an idea that I thought it would work to an idea that I know it works. And that was a very different style. By the time we reached the mid-1990s, we really believed we had a winning situation here. We had something that the national models believed could fly. All of the models were built around a sense of critical elements, best practice standards, and we really elevated performance in ways we hadn't done before. And the research was developing, and it was prolific across a lot of fields. This was the time where we first saw the brain research. Now, many of you, I don't know if you remember this, but Time magazine did a picture, and it was visual, it was in color. And here's a baby's brain that's excited, nurtured, learning new things, and there were 1 million colors in that baby's brain. And here's the brain of a chronically neglected child. And it was just dark, with no bright lights, no exciting things happening. And for many people in the country, I tell you, they looked at that. You didn't have to be a rocket scientist to say, what kind of brain do you want in your baby? And what kind of brain do you want in the babies of all the other babies in your community? And that research alone really sparked a political interest in home visiting because it really reached infants. It was the program that could get children off to a good start. When the U.S. Advisory Board was writing their report on what could you do to prevent child abuse in 1991, they said you could do a lot of things, but no single intervention has the promise of home visitation, they wrote. And people began to believe that this is something that we really need to invest in. And states weren't doing things locally anymore. They were replicating national models. And they liked the idea of replicating national models because it took a little of the pressure off. Here were things that worked, had been proven to work. Could we move them and incorporate them into our community? And so home visitation became, I like to term it, replication machines. We began to turn out program models and program sites with the notion that if all we did was just replicate what somebody else did, we could be successful. And we had a lot of key takeaways during this period. We had unbelievable expansion in this country of home visiting. If you have a chance, on the Chapin Hall website, chapinhall.org website, there's a map of the expansion of home visiting programs from just 6 of the large national models. And we go back from 1970 until the present, and you can see how the map across the country fills in. And it filled in to a great extent before there was even federal investment. We had a wide expansion of services. We also had a variety of programs now that we had productive and some not so productive tension across the models that we're developing. And it became we used to love the differences in home visiting programs. Some of you have said this, there's a lot of different ways to work with families. You want a lot of different models. But during this period, something interesting happened. People began to see differences not as differences that everybody brought something to the table with, but differences as my difference is better than your difference. And that's a very dangerous thing to do when you're trying to build a field, to begin to see difference as some pecking order or priority. And it was, in many respects, pretty destructive. And then people started asking some tough questions about the research. You know, we do celebrate the positive findings in this field, but I have to tell you, not every research project produces positive findings. Not every clinical trial in medicine produces positive findings. We seem to be able to accept the fact that in medicine, sometimes everybody doesn't live or everybody doesn't get better. But in social service programs, we believe we should be 100% successful. So when we find things that don't work, we kind of want to ignore it. We want to pretend it's not there. But here's the deal. If you don't learn what you're not doing well, you'll never do better. You'll never be able to expand your program, build a stronger base, do your work more effectively if you're not honest and straightforward with what you currently aren't doing well. And during this period, there was a dramatic shift in how people started looking at home visiting. The program that everybody thought was the solution to what ails us, in the beginning of the decade, by the end of the decade, people were talking about the collective findings from this field and labeling them as sobering. Like, wow, it doesn't work every time. We need to figure out more specifically when these programs work, for whom, and under what circumstance. And I think that that serious reflection on the quality of our work that we took seriously, both researchers as well as practitioners, was the reason the program continued to the next level, which is what I've called the initiative or the movement. It could be elevated because people were honest and straightforward about what worked and what didn't work. So what are some of the things we've done in this 3.0 version? Well, I think the movement went to field building as well as model building. The individual models started to realize, you know what, none of us have the keys to the kingdom here. Nobody has figured everything out. But collectively, we're stronger than our individual elements. And you've already seen this working in Los Angeles. There was a conscious, intentional effort on the part of all of the models. And when I talk about the models, and I'm talking about the large, intensive home visiting models, HFA, PAT, NFP, every one of them, early Head Start, took a critical look at their standards and said, how could we do this better? How can we make it work better? They worked on developing common standards, things they could agree on what worked. They focused on the idea of implementation with fidelity, because we started realizing that just because you do the model doesn't mean you're going to do it well, and doesn't mean you're going to get the same outcomes if you don't, in some way, follow the instruction book. Now, do I think that means you do every single thing exactly the same? No. But what it means is, if you vary from what you think you should be doing, you do it intentionally. You think about, why am I changing this program? Why am I going to do visits in a different order? Why am I going to maybe use a different staff? Why might I introduce a new curriculum or a new idea? You do it because you say to yourself, gosh, you know, the families I'm working with seem to respond better if I do it in this new way than if I do it in the old way. So those kinds of variations or adaptations are helpful to building the field. What's not helpful is to say, God, it's really hard to get there when I'm supposed to get there, and maybe the family doesn't need it anyway, and maybe it's just too difficult, and I just think I'm not going to try it. That's not helpful. And so I think as a field, we've really understood that there had to be a stronger, good relationship between what we were learning in research and what we were doing in practice. You know, I've been a researcher my whole life. I've gone into many programs saying, hi, I'm a researcher. I've been funded by the federal government to see how you're doing. It's not a happy, you think it's bad to go into a room and do an assessment of a person you don't know. Go in and try to do an assessment of a program telling them you're there from the funder and you're there just to help them out. It's a really tough sell, and you develop a little thick-skinned. But you know, I think in that partnership between what researchers want to do and what practitioners really need to know in order to do the job better, if those two folks aren't talking to each other, I don't know how we improve practice. And that's, in many ways, we've really developed this kind of relationship between research and practice in this current period. We've really expanded the kind of evidence we collect and the quality of it. But in some ways, and here's the negative twist, we sometimes equate the quality of a study or a quality of the research to the quality of the program. And that's not necessarily true. There are some great programs out there that maybe they don't have their randomized clinical trial. I think Welcome Baby is one of those, although it soon will have a very sturdy research behind it. We know it works because of the stories that you saw in that video. You really are getting a collective sense that what you're doing is good. It doesn't mean the quality of the program. Quality of research is simply that, the quality of the research. The quality of the program comes from the people that do the work. And if we can be clearer in that language, I think the better off we are. Now, Charlene did a great job with the history of LA. So this was only how this fits into this period. You were doing Welcome Baby during this period. You were starting when the field was growing to really build it off the 2009-2015 strategic plan that First Five developed, which had as its core a focus on community building, which is very important, and a focus on evidence-based practice. It went, First Five had been investing in home visiting programs for many years in many different ways, but this was fundamentally different. This was going to set up a program that really was, I think, embrace this two-tier approach where you do something for everybody, the universal aspect of it, and then realize that you needed to support high-quality, more extensive evidence-based programs for families that most needed them. This kind of two-tier is what I really think is the most novel and interesting part of the work you're doing, and it's what will indeed drive the field going forward. So we had during this period some key takeaways again. 2 of them are what I call good trends. 3 of them sometimes trouble me, and I want to share them with you. 2 of them, there's no doubt that more families are being reached. You saw it in the slide that Charlene showed you. That is true across the country. The number of families being served is extraordinary, in the hundreds of thousands, and we're excited about that. More communities have multiple models, which I also think is exciting, because I don't think you should just have one option. Nobody likes to go and buy the one option. What's the one thing we most like? We like choice. That's what the American system is built on. We want choice, and if families can be involved in that choice, so much the better. But there are 3 things that sometimes trouble me a little bit. One is that home visitors are asked to resolve issues that may be outside their current skill set, or maybe a need or something that families are struggling with that home visiting may not be the best solution for. That we've taken this program that we think is fabulous, and we've now made it the all-purpose vitamin pill of everything that ails a family. And we've seen it in the federal legislation. Now home visitors should be testing the water for lead safety. They should be doing inspections for lead. They should be making sure that they're doing obesity education and training. They should be the major solution for everything that ails families. That's a difficult sell because you already have a full plate going into that home. You have things you have to do. You can't be their mental health counselor. You can identify problems and link them up to the right service, but you can't be all things to all families. The second thing that bothers me is that, yes, I like data, but I think it's often used more for accountability and less for learning. It goes back to my notion that people want to have then perfect scores. We've all been in school, you all like straight A's, you all like the 90%, everybody wants the high scores. But you don't, if people aren't comfortable and honest in sharing the information they're learning from their data for the purposes of learning for themselves and teaching their colleagues, it seems a little stupid to collect it. It really does a disservice. And then the third thing that distresses me in the trends I see is there does seem to be this incredible stress about saving money, more so than helping families. I loved Armando's little statistic about the economic value of every child. That's great. But it troubles me just a little bit that something has value based on its economic value, based on its dollar sign. Home visiting programs should be replicated if they can save money. Well, some things are just going to make people better. We're not going to be able to quantify it. We're not going to be able to put a dollar tag on it. But or the dollar tag is very far down the line. The big savings from what you're doing now are when these babies are 18 years old. That's when we're going to see the big return on investment. We're not going to see it tomorrow. And this notion that people have that within 2 years you got to earn your keep back. You got to show that you've made a return on investment. That is ludicrous. And there are a lot of really smart people, many of my dear friends, that are just chasing this dollar sign like no tomorrow. Like if we can just show that we save money, people will like us. People will believe in us. The videos that you show here, I've been sitting at the table telling people, you've got to get them to people outside this room because you know what's on the video. But all these politicians, all these people that talk about how they want to, I won't say, change America, make America great, this is what makes America great. This is what makes the country run. So in some ways, get your message out and let people know that it's not just about the dollars. It's really, really about helping families and children. So as we think, what did I do again? Do it back? Okay, one more. Maybe I should just point at you and say, okay, fine. All right. So as we go through this, what kinds of hope do I have for home visiting programs going forward? Well, I think that I'd like to see that we'll continue to see improvements in what I call the structural elements of the work that we do. Improve quality assurance and quality feedback loops to make sure that we do the work in the way we know we have to. An expansion of cross-peer learning opportunities. Every day, everybody in the world has an opportunity to be a teacher and a learner. And I've said this in many of my talks, I don't want anyone to be offended, but if you think you have nothing to teach and nothing to learn, you should die. Because you are taking up precious space that we need for people that understand that you're lifetime learners. So that's one of the things that's most important. The other structural elements, we're going to get better at our work, we're going to be lifetime learners, and I think we're going to use the new research findings we get, both here in LA and around the country. I also like to think that we're going to get improvements in what I call the dynamic elements of the work that we do. What do I mean by that? One, a lot more greater collaboration. That we're going to use less language about I and more languages about we. That you're going to learn how to work with your colleagues that are doing different kinds of programs, other referral systems in your community. Second, that we'll ask more critical questions. We won't be satisfied with what we're doing. We're going to want to do something just a little bit better. We're going to ask questions about how long should people be in these programs? How much service do they really need? How many families can a home visitor realistically work with at any one point in time? Particularly if the families are more and more troubled, more and more difficult. You can only have so many good friends, you know? So you've got to think about a caseload that allows you to do the very best work you can. What goals should home visiting directly address? What can you do when you're with the mom? And what are the other things that you need to find partners out there to help you meet those needs of the families? And what kind of data do we really need? What's essential? And how can we get that information back in the hands of home visitors in the quickest, most appropriate manner? And when we get a message we don't like, or a finding that distresses us, we don't shoot the researcher that's delivering it. We say, brother, that's a really interesting story you have to tell. What can we do about changing the ending of that story? And then finally, I think we also need, I'd like better balance. And what do I mean by better balance? I think that individual, be they state agencies to local agencies, federal agencies to state agencies, we're going to find that shared way of using our creativity together to build stronger and better programs. We're going to need parents to access both formal and informal supports. There's not enough resources to provide paid services to everybody. But you know, if we can tap into the resources and the generosity of people and friends and communities, that's when we begin to see a difference. We need to see that individual programs are going to do their best when they're aligned with other high-quality programs in their community. And we're going to see really a balance in the kind of leadership frameworks so that everyone will feel they have a major contribution to make in going forward. So I just want to talk a little bit about going from program to context, just by way of wrapping up. This one is, so I call this my little egg slide. The egg slide really talks about if we were to build the kind of environment in which not just families can work well, but programs can work well. I've been thinking now, we talk about communities that make it hard for families to operate and meet the needs. I think there is things about the context in which programs operate that could be more or less helpful to the way we do the program. So let's say we start with an evidence-based model or program, which is where we are. We then try to put in this universal assessment of need, and I, like Charlene, am a universalist. I say it everywhere I go. I think it's absolutely so important that we have some outreach so that every parent, at the time they give birth, knows that somebody out there cares about how they're going to take care of this kid. That somebody's asking a question, not to be judgmental, but to say, wow, this is a really tough job and we want to make sure you have every single thing you need. And on the other side of that, if you are a family that's just humming along and you've got it all set, and when you've reached where you want to be, that you instill in people the other obligation is to give to others. That there's two sides to the social exchange, what we give as well as what we receive. That we would take that and we'd build in then this strong referral system for families, and then we'd finally begin to alter the context in which families live. Let me say a little bit about each of these in wrapping up. When I think about implementing innovations, really think hard about how you might augment the program. How can you make it better? And let your voices be heard in that process. How can you reach families you're not reaching? You know that Welcome Baby isn't universally accepted by all kinds and all cultures and all ethnic groups. What could you do to make this program more accepting to everybody? I think you identify the leverage points for systemic change to evaluate their efficacy in improving program performance. What is it that we could do in the system of delivering services, whether it's training, whether it's quality rating systems, blending funding streams, what could it do to build a stronger net for the program you have? And create some kind of learning networks. Again, you're all learners and teachers. Gather together, have conversations. Face-to-face is great, but you know, you can do conference calls. You can pick up the phone and call your colleagues. You don't necessarily need a technical assistance provider to talk to each other. No offense, Charlene, and you do a great job, but you're empowered to pick up the phone or to send a text message or to send out a message to some of your coworkers and say, wow, I'm seeing this issue in my families. How about if 5 of us get on the phone and talk about it? Continue to realize that you're the source of a lot of the knowledge that needs to be developed. We need to think about creating a context to sustain programs, as I said. All of your programs are located in an organizational structure. That organizational culture has to be supportive of the work that you do. You need to engage a lot of stakeholders in really broad partnerships going forward. And you need to be careful and conscientious about documenting the effects of your collaboration. We all say, well, we should all get together and talk. Yeah, but what's the real value of that? I've been part of a lot of collaborations where the real value begins and ends with the people in the room because they like each other, it's great, they get food, it's wonderful, it's a day off of work. But it should be deeper than that. It should translate back to your communities, and in the end, it should translate back to your families and making them more involved. Then the idea of normative change is what I think is so important. There's a lot of talk about public health. Wouldn't it be great if we had a public health solution to what bothers us? But the nature of the public health exchange is that people act in ways that not only help them, but help their neighbors and friends. They feel empowered to act and suggest to people behaviors that improve it for all of us. So think about the Stop Smoking, which has obviously been wildly successful here in Los Angeles. People feel comfortable telling each other, gosh, when I'm old enough to know there wasn't anti-smoking laws in restaurants, and sometimes the food would come and the table next to you would light up a cigarette, and you'd feel empowered to say, you know, my meal just came, could you please put that out? And most people would do it. Seatbelt laws. We all feel empowered to tell people when they're in our cars to put their seatbelts on. What is it, what could we develop that would empower people to be more intentional, more direct, in a respectful way, to help create that sense of communication across within a community around the issue of caring for a child? That we need to nurture the values that make collaboration easier and doing the right thing easier, rather than nurture those values that break us apart. I often describe this as you don't put the Dairy Queen next to the health club. If you really want people to be healthy, you don't put temptation in their way. You create communities that'll help parents do the very right thing. And we create a common expectation for all children, that we're here about children, and you act in ways that bring us together, not apart. This little chart up here, and I know you have it in your packet, so if you look at what we do with the child welfare system in this country, if you think, going back to the comment about issues that bring us together, interconnectedness, the little purple areas there are things that bring us together. The red is the thing that keeps us apart. In child welfare, if you see somebody at risk and you report it to child welfare, you've kind of absolved yourself of any responsibility. You're saying, that parent's got a problem, I'm just going to send him to child welfare. That's not exactly what you want to do. Think of the other things you could do. You could offer direct assistance. You could help them. You could refer them to other resources. You could work with them to advocate for real change in your community. All of those things bring people together, not separate them. And that's the kind of change we need to see if we're going to make us really be successful. There's a wonderful quote that Robert Withnow wrote. He's a sociologist and a theologian. And he wrote that every volunteer act of compassion finds its justification not in offering solutions. So when we volunteer and we help each other, we're not solving the problem, but here's the deal. It offers both that the good society we envision is possible and that the very act of helping each other gives us strength and a common destiny. When we do things together, we're empowered and we realize we're not in this alone. We are indeed in this in a collective way. So when I think of all of this, I come up with a set of questions to consider going forward. And we're not going to answer them today, or who knows, maybe not in my lifetime, but questions about what is the tolerance among policymakers for local autonomy? Which decisions do you have to control, and which decisions can you pass down the food chain? It's true in every level, no matter where you cut it. If you're a department head, what are you willing to control? What are you willing to give to your affiliates? If you're a program supervisor, what are you willing to run yourself, and what are you willing to give away? Understanding where we can lodge responsibility and authority. What can be done collaboratively? What might remain in silos? silos aren't entirely bad. They serve a function. Do we all have to be experts in every area? Or is it about trusting what people are doing in their area so that you can build out in yours? Thinking about the balance between implementing with fidelity and fostering innovation. Both are important. We need to decide how we're going to do it and in what way. And then what are the expected benefits of addressing an issue from a systems perspective, and how can we determine if such benefits are being accrued? We all want to do systems. We all believe that that's the way to go. We all understand we're connected. But we need to begin to be more intentional in deciding what part of this collective venture produces the outcomes we want, and what about the collective venture might be things that could be getting in our way of doing better. So I leave you with this slide, which was my attempt recently to think about home visiting and what else needs to be done. You notice home visiting is not the center of this slide, because there are a lot of things that build community and a lot of things that help families. And if we think about creating a context where the infrastructure is supportive of all families, and we have a mindset that we're there to support all our children, not just not the children we give birth to. I always tell people I don't take credit for my children the way they've turned out, for the good things they do, because I'm not taking all the blame if something suddenly goes south. But here's the deal. My children are a product of, sure, what my husband and I have done with them, what our extended family has done for them, but they're the product of every adult that has touched their lives. Their teachers, their coaches, the friends of the parents of their peers. And if you take that mindset every time you come across to a child and say, what am I leaving this child with? What's the vision I'm giving this child? What am I telling this child about how the world works? Then you know what? I think we will have the kind of collective impact that we all know is necessary to make sure that this next generation is productive enough to meet Armando's expectations of what they're going to have to carry. Thank you very much.